I'm Steve Mann and this is Paper Classroom. Welcome. In this history tutorial we're going to talk about paper markets. And by paper markets I'm really meaning where does paper come from, who's consuming it, what are the changes in consumption, and what are the different market segments, what are the grades, the major grades of paper that we're talking about. Well, this is one way of looking at the markets. So this is global production by grade. As you can see with that orange segment, 50% of all the paper made in the world is in the form of board or wrapping paper. So it's a form of packaging paper. If you look at the green segment opposite, 29% printing and writings, and above that grey segment, 10% newsprint. So together we've got 39% communication papers. And then we've got all the different grades of tissue in that blue segment, what we call household and sanitary. And then finally, everything else that's not in any of those categories constitutes about 4% of the world's production. And what's happening at the moment is the world is seeing an increase in the amount of packaging paper that's being produced and a decrease in the communication papers. Tissue is also on the rise. If we look at the communication papers in a little more detail, this is the type of graph or chart that's made when people are looking for so-called gaps in the market. Originally, there were three types of papers produced in this sector. There was newsprint, there was super calendared papers, and there was lightweight coated papers. So in between here and here and here, there were the so-called gaps in the market that people filled with those grades. Now, for those that are studying for the proper level 2 exam, you often get questions along the lines of what are the sort of lower grades of graphic papers, what are the high quality graphic papers, name 4 or 5 or 6 different types of graphic paper. Well, the ones I would recommend to you, things that are easy to remember. At the low end of the market, we have newsprint, improved newsprint, and super improved newsprint. What happened there was newsprint was just ordinary newsprint, mechanical paper, fibre as it was in those days, calendar a little bit. And when that type of newsprint first came out, all the newspapers in the UK were printed in black and white. There was no such thing as colour. As they wanted an improvement in the quality of the paper so they could get coloured newspapers and improvements in definition in photographs, then along came improved newsprint, which was calendared even more, super improved newsprint, and even smoother surface. And then finally, this STIN, surface treated improved newsprint. This is where they actually put a size press on and size press the surface. So if you were asked to remember 3 grades down at the bottom end of the quality scale, then the things to remember are newsprint, improved newsprint, super improved newsprint. At the top end of the scale, if you're asked about the top end, you're talking really about coated papers. So we have LWC, MWC, HWC. LWC, lightweight coated. That means you've got a lightweight sheet and you put a nice coating on it. MWC, medium weight coated. We don't mean we've got a medium weight of coating. What it means here is you've got a medium grammage that's got a coating on. And finally, HWC, heavyweight coated. So you're talking really of boards there. So you've got a really heavy sheet on which you have coated. So that's the way to remember key grades. Now, when you come to sell paper, there's many different ways of trying to sell paper. Everyone's looking for their unique selling point, and you can categorize paper in many different ways depending on how you want to sell it. For example, you could sell it, as you see here, based on its basis weight. So tissue we usually define as anything less than 40 grams per square metre. Typical paper will be between 40 and 140 grams per square metre. The Americans have another grade here, 120 to 200, that they call paperboard, but we typically call board anywhere from 140 to well above 200 grams. So one way of selling paper is on the basis weight. Another way of selling paper is, what is it made from? Is it made from mechanical pulp? That'll have stiffness properties and it'll have some good printability properties for certain printing processes. Is it made from a chemical pulp, so it'll be whiter and brighter and not yellow as much? Is it made from recycled fibre because you're looking for an eco-friendly paper? Or could it be made from a non-wood fibre altogether, something like currency or checkbook or passport paper being made from 100% cotton? Or could it be a synthetic paper? You might want to try and sell it by virtue of its finish. Have you just taken some paper machine off the end of a machine and sold it as it is? Have you put it through a calendar stack to make this paper more smooth? Has it been through an offline process and been through super calendared, so it's not just smooth but glossy? Or is it a glazed paper? Have you dried it on just one cylinder on one side and put an MG cylinder? Have you dried it over an MG and glazed just one side? You might want to sell paper by its colour. Have you used a bleach pulp? Have you used an unbleached pulp? Or have you put some sort of dye or pigment in to make a coloured paper? Have you applied any sort of surface treatment? Again, have you just taken it off the machine uncoated, no surface treatment whatsoever? Or have you coated it? It might be a size press coating of starch or AKD. It might have a pigmented coating. Or maybe you've laminated it. Maybe you've put the paper together with something else, either another piece of paper or some polypropylene, something like that. And finally, you can sell paper by virtue of its use. Are you selling a packaging paper or a wrapping paper? Is it a filter paper for a laboratory or for an air filter for a car or for a bag in a vacuum cleaner? Has it got a very low level of metal ions and it's useful for electrical purposes, for making capacitors and things like that? Is it a writing paper? Is it a printing paper? Is it for doing paintings? Is it a graphic paper for postcards and posters? Is it a security paper? Does it have special security features in? Or could it be just a standard filter paper? So there are many ways of selling paper. You should be aware of all the different ways of categorizing paper. This is just a very simple chart just to show you what's happened to paper production in various countries throughout the world. When I first started teaching papermaking, well before the year 2000, America here was the world's number one, with just over about 80 million tonnes a year being sold. And what surprised me the first time I looked at it was this black line here. Japan was the second largest paper and board producer in the world. And that's amazing, really, since they have so very few raw materials. Everything is brought in, everything is imported into Japan, assembled into high quality paper, and then resold. China at the time was about number 3 in the world. Germany is a big paper producer, and the UK is really a very small player in the world of paper and board. But prior to the year 2000, the Chinese government decided they were going to be the largest paper and board producers in the world, and the smaller mills that produced just a few tons a year were shut down. Large mills were encouraged to establish themselves in China, and as you can see, there's been this sustained growth, and now China makes over 100 million tons of paper and board. America has been on a very, very slow decline. It's now the second largest producer in the world. Japan is also in a very, very slow decline. The UK is also in a very, very slow decline. Less than 4 million tonnes in the year 2019. The one exception in Europe is Germany. Germany is doing very well. That's continued to have a very slow but a sustained growth in paper and board production. And this is an interesting chart. I used to provide a table saying what the consumption of paper and board was in different countries. And then one day I had the idea of, well, why don't we look at the change in consumption? So this is over a 14-year period between the year 2000 and the year 2014. And you can see that Sweden and Canada have reduced these numbers, by the way, are kilos of paper consumed per person per year. So you can see here, Sweden and Canada between 2000 and 2014 have actually reduced their per capita consumption of paper and board by just over 40%. The USA, Finland and UK have reduced their overall consumption of paper and board by over 30%. Japan's reduced it by 15%. Germany, as I said, was unusual in Europe. That was increasing its use of paper and board as well as increasing its production. They're here by about 8%. South Korea has gone up by 19%. Russia has more than doubled at 109%. Pakistan has very well more than doubled at 133%. China, 162%. And when you think there are 1.3 billion Chinese, each consuming 162% of paper compared to what they used to do. And overall in the world, there's been a 2% increase in paper consumption. So you can understand why mills in these countries are closing down and people are building mills in these countries where the demand is. Well, I hope you found those statistics interesting. Thank you for watching my video. Please enjoy the other videos and please give us any feedback that you have.